Imagine a sealed room untouched for nearly half a century, a forgotten locker hidden deep within Titan Station, and inside it, a single photograph that should not exist, an image that shifts between moments, revealing leaders of a galactic war frozen between heartbeats and a secret unit whispered only in myths, the Watchers. This discovery does not just challenge history, it threatens to rewrite the very future of humanity. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The voice of the station was a soft hiss, the kind that makes a person think of sleeping machines and old secrets. The storage unit on Titan had not been opened for 47 years. Sienna Marlowe knew that from the maintenance log glowing on her wrist screen. She stood still, letting the moment settle. This was not just another box on a list. This was a door to family history and to galactic war mystery. Waiting behind a thin seal of dust, she touched the release. Stale air slipped out like a sigh. Inside, the small room was 3 meters by 4, crowded with relics of travel and work. Crates from asteroid belt mines, sealed canisters labeled with half-forgotten ports, and coils of cable that had curled into themselves like sleeping serpents. Kato Rin, her field technician and loyal friend, stepped in behind her. His mag boots clicked on the floor, a measured rhythm in the hush. "Another dead end?" he asked, half teasing. His visor lights showed data scrolling. Dot. But his tone stayed friendly. Sienna did not answer. She moved slowly, careful with every touch, careful with every breath. She had learned that history prefers gentle hands. The storage unit smelled of recycled air, old polymers, and long wait. Every detail added to the voiceover picture. Titan Station, a sealed room, and the quiet hope of discovery. Her light found a military footlocker pushed tight against the back wall. The paint was faded, the corners dented. The emblem muted, but still clear. Kato brushed the circle of stars with a gloved finger and nodded. "Pre-accords," he said, in a low, respectful voice. Before the Reconciliation Treaty changed the symbol. The locker belonged to a time when the colonial fleet fought under a different sky. The keywords hung there for listeners. Terran Fleet, Galactic War, Pre-Accords History. Sienna knelt and keyed in her genetic code. The lock clicked, not stubborn, but eager. The lid rose. And the past rose with it. Inside lay careful layers of life. Darkened datapads, a folded dress uniform the color of deep ocean, and a small cedar box. She lifted each item with steady hands. Then she reached the bottom, where a flat shape rested, wrapped in soft protective fabric. It was the size of an old book, thin and firm. She unwrapped it and forgot to breathe. It was a photograph, not a hologram, not a tablet, not a display of any kind. It was synthetic paper with a crystalline backing that caught the overhead light like thin ice. The bridge of a battle cruiser filled the frame, framed by hexagonal viewports. Officers stood in formation. In the center, a commander held himself with quiet power. Sienna recognized the square jaw and the narrow scar. "Admiral Ronan Strake," Kato whispered, as if the name itself could wake the room. The story of the war had taught every student that face. Yet the photograph did something a photograph should not do. It seemed to move, but not like a video. It shifted as if it were a breath held too long, as if the people in it were frozen between heartbeats. When Sienna tilted the image, small changes appeared. The Admiral's eyes brightened, then softened. The tactical display at the back rearranged its positions in tiny ways, showing not one plan, but many. It felt like several moments layered together in one still frame. Kato leaned closer, visor almost touching the edge. "This isn't standard," he said. "It's wrong in the right way." He pointed to the shoulder of a medical officer standing a step behind the admiral. There, woven fine as a whisper, was a symbol you could miss if you blinked, an eye surrounded by 7 stars. Sienna had seen drawings of that mark in fringe articles and late-night interviews. It carried a name people spoke like a rumor: the Watchers. The voiceover now had the key phrases that draw listeners in: Titan Station, Sealed Storage Unit, Quantum Photograph, The Watchers, Admiral Ronan Strake. Sienna felt a line pull tight between her family and a hidden chapter of the war. She did not claim understanding. She simply knew this artifact was alive with meaning, and meaning can change lives. She wrapped the photograph again with care, as if closing a story that wanted to leap from the page. "We can't leave this here," she said. Her voice was calm, but the choice was already made. "We need expert eyes, someone who can test the paper, the crystalline layer, the resonance patterns. Professor Osric Vale on Luna knows the period. Dr. Hana Morimoto can scan quantum states." Kato nodded without argument. He had the same feeling. This was no warehouse find. This was a signal from the past, asking to be heard now. They sealed the unit and stepped back into Titan's pale corridor light. Behind them, the room returned to stillness. Ahead of them, a different kind of noise waited: labs, debates, and the gravity of new evidence. Sienna breathed in, steady and clear. For the voiceover listener, this is the promise: a mystery grounded in simple details, a discovery that bends history, and a path that leads from a sealed room on Titan to the edge of what a photograph can hold. As they walked, Sienna glanced at the wrapped image cradled in her arms. It felt faintly warm, as if the moment inside it still lived. The story had begun, not with shouting, but with a soft click and a held breath. And in that breath, the future leaned closer. Listening, the wrapped photograph rested on Professor Osric Vale's desk, its presence heavier than any of the books stacked around him. For 30 years, he had dismissed stories of lost artifacts and secret war relics. Sienna Marlowe knew his reputation well. He was careful, skeptical, and always calm. Yet when she unwrapped the photograph, the silence in his office changed. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for a pair of white gloves. "This should not exist," he whispered, almost forgetting they were not alone. Kato Rin leaned forward, watching the professor as much as the photograph. Osric adjusted his loupe and studied the crystalline surface. "The stock is authentic, Xiao process paper, but the resonance patterns?" He paused, his voice dropping. "This is quantum locking. No one had that technology during the Galactic War." The words carried weight. For the voiceover, they come steady, clear, and deliberate. The listener hears the professor's disbelief, the technician's sharp intake of breath, and Sienna's quiet resolve. The scene sets itself. A scholar, a technician, and an archivist staring at an impossible image that history says should not exist. To confirm the find, they brought the photograph to Dr. Hana Morimoto, a quantum imaging expert. Her lab was built for detail, for capturing evidence so fine it could escape even the sharpest eye. "We'll handle this carefully," she said, lowering the photograph into the scanner's chamber. Like a sleeping creature, the machine hummed with soft power as light fields crossed the crystalline surface. What appeared on her screens made the room fall silent. Every thread of uniform, every reflection in the viewport glass, came alive in impossible clarity. Kato pointed to the sleeve of the medical officer who stood behind Admiral Ronan Strake. "Look," he said. Hana magnified the area. Woven into the fabric were words so small they could not be seen without enhancement. The message was simple but chilling. Timeline 7 confirmed. Termination window, April 14th. The date echoed like a bell in all their minds. April 14th, the day Admiral Strake was killed. Official records named the assassin a fanatic from the outer colonies. History books taught it as the turning point of the war. But this image suggested something different. The photograph whispered of choice, of sacrifice, and of hidden hands that had shaped the path of humanity. As Hana deepened the scan, the image shifted in strange ways. Overlapping battle formations flickered across the tactical display behind Strake. Sienna saw them change, one after another, like doors opening onto different futures. Most showed escalation and destruction. One alone showed an end to conflict. Hana's voice was calm, but her words cut deep. If Strake had lived, the war would have dragged on. The Watchers saw only one survival path: his death. Professor Vale paced the room, muttering fragments of lectures he had given for decades. He had dismissed the Watchers as myth, a bedtime story for soldiers, a whisper about seers who could step between probability streams. Now the photograph spoke louder than all his doubts. The next layer of the scan revealed something stranger still. Hidden in the resonance was text written across the very fluctuations of probability. It assembled slowly on the display. We watched the paths. 7 converged. In 6, humanity fell. In 1, the Admiral died, and the species lived. History cannot remember us. The war only paused. They will return. Be ready. The words filled the room with a cold that was not from the air system. Cato gripped the counter as if the floor tilted beneath him. Sienna stared at the lines until her vision blurred. This was not just an artifact. It was a message from the past, meant for this exact moment. Hana traced the decay pattern on the lock. This isn't natural, she said softly. The quantum state was designed to release now. After almost a century, the photograph opens itself. The professor stopped pacing. Why now? His question was simple, but the silence that followed made it heavy. Sienna thought of deep space signals she had read about. Strange pulses dismissed as background noise. Cato, ever restless, pulled up readings he had saved. The pulses repeated in 3-beat sequences, shrinking over months, like a ticking clock. It's a countdown, he said. 7 months. Maybe less. The photograph, the Watchers, the warning, all pointed to the same truth. History had not ended the war. It had only placed it on pause. Sienna wrapped the image again with steady hands. Her voice was calm, but the choice was already made. We can't leave this in a lab. We have to follow where it leads. For the listener, the voiceover leaves a clear impression. Scholars uncovering a truth buried in plain sight. Scanners pulling secrets from impossible paper. And a name whispered like a shadow. The Quiet 7. The Watchers had seen futures no one else could. And now, their evidence had found Sienna, demanding to be carried forward. The stage was set, not for answers, but for the next step into a mystery that threatened to wake after nearly 100 silent years. The journey to Europa began without fanfare. Sienna Marlowe and her small team carried with them the photograph and the crystal they had unlocked from her family's belongings. Coordinates hidden inside the crystal pointed to a location no official map had ever marked. Beneath the frozen crust of Europa, a secret facility waited. It was not in any database, not in any archive, but it called to them all the same. Their borrowed ship drifted quietly through Jupiter's orbit. Cato Rin handled the controls, his movements precise but calm. Professor Osric Vale kept muttering his disbelief, filling the silence with fragments of history lessons now made uncertain. Dr. Hana Morimoto stayed focused, adjusting sensors to track the strange signals that echoed through the void. They all knew this was more than a search for answers. It was a step into a hidden chapter of the Galactic War. As Europa grew large in the viewport, the ice glistened in sunlight like a polished mirror. The scanners traced a faint energy signature below the surface. The coordinates aligned perfectly. Cato guided the ship into a narrow fissure in the ice, the engines humming as they descended into darkness. The walls closed around them, carved smooth by heat cutters used long before their time. "This was built with care," Hana said, her voice steady over the comm. "Someone wanted this place hidden, but never lost." At the end of the tunnel, a dock revealed itself. The airlock responded as if it had been waiting, glowing with the same 7-star symbol Sienna had seen on the photograph. The doors opened with a sigh, releasing stale air that had been sealed for nearly a century. Inside was not a cavern of machines or rows of weapons. It was a single hangar, quiet and deliberate in design. In the center rested a ship, slender and graceful, held in place by anchors that still hummed with low power. The walls of the hangar glowed faintly, keeping the air clean, the floors polished, as if time itself had been slowed to preserve this one secret. Professor Vale whispered, "This is not a relic. This is a message." They approached T. Sienna felt the weight of expectation, as if the Watchers themselves were standing beside her. Near the control dais, a plaque was fixed into the floor. The inscription was plain. "This craft carries a guidance core tuned to a survivable path. It will answer only to one who accepts the burden." Hana activated the systems with careful precision. Lights came alive along the hull, soft and blue. The guidance core projected star maps, lines of probability branching like rivers across the cabin walls. 7 paths stretched into the future, but only one continued unbroken. "Timeline 7, Sienna said softly. The same message from the photograph. The core's presence filled the air, a quiet vibration more felt than heard. It asked for a promise, not a password. It wanted words, not codes. Sienna stepped forward, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "I will follow the path that protects tomorrow. Even if no one remembers my name." The ship accepted. The maps sharpened, revealing details hidden beneath layers of probability. They saw images of destruction, wars stretched too long, futures collapsing under their own weight. And then they saw the single narrow line where survival remained possible. Cato opened sealed containers stored near the ship. Inside were small devices labeled in neat handwriting: communication seeds, harmonic relays, probability markers. Each item seemed designed not for attack, but for connection, as if the Watchers had prepared tools for speaking rather than fighting. They weren't building weapons, Hana said, her tone firm. They were building ways to be heard. Professor Vale examined the records displayed by the guidance core. They showed medical reports, tactical plans, and future predictions that had come true with uncanny accuracy. The Watchers weren't guessing, he said. They were pruning futures, shaping history so this moment could arrive. The realization carried a weight heavier than any relic. Sienna touched the side of the ship, feeling a faint warmth through her glove. "This was meant for us," she said. "Not just for my family, not just for historians, for anyone willing to continue their work." Cato turned to the group, his usual humor gone. "The signals we've tracked, the countdown pulses, they match the Watchers' warnings. Whatever they feared, it's coming back. And soon." Silence filled the hangar, but it was not empty silence. It was full of understanding, full of decision. The Watchers had hidden their secret here, not for glory, not for fame, but for survival. They had trusted the future to find them when the time was right. Sienna looked around the hangar, at her team, at the ship, at the devices waiting to be deployed. She felt the threads of history pulling tight, weaving the past into the present. "We have to finish what they started," she said. "We can't let the pause end without being ready." For the listener, the voiceover paints the image clearly. Europa's ice hiding a quiet hangar, a ship preserved for nearly a century, a guidance core tuned to the only path where humanity survives. Scholars, technicians, and an archivist stand together, realizing they have inherited not just secrets, but responsibility. As they prepared the ship for flight, the ice above them groaned, as if the moon itself remembered the burden it carried. Echoes under ice whispered of futures waiting to be chosen, and in the quiet ship's hum, the Watcher's promise lived again. The ship rose gently from Europa's hidden hangar, its hull glowing with a faint blue light. Sienna Marlowe sat in the forward seat, her hands resting carefully on the console. She felt the hum of the guidance core through her gloves, a steady vibration that seemed to echo with history itself. Kato Rin piloted with quiet focus. Dr. Hana Morimoto monitored the core's shifting maps, and Professor Osric Vale sat back, watching with eyes heavy from the weight of knowledge. The maps filled the cabin walls once again, lines of probability drawn like rivers across a dark sky. 7 paths unfolded, branching from one shared past. 6 ended in ruin. 1 line ran forward, narrow but unbroken. The guidance core pulsed softly, asking a question without words. It was not seeking data, not asking for codes. It wanted an oath, a choice that could not be reversed. Hana whispered, "It's asking for commitment, not control. Someone must step forward and accept the path." Sienna felt the weight of every moment that had brought her here. The storage unit on Titan, the impossible photograph, the words hidden in the fabric, the warning from the Watchers. She placed her hand on the reader. Her voice was steady, simple, made for clarity in any ear. "I accept. I will carry this burden, even if history never speaks my name." The ship's systems acknowledged her words. Lights brightened. The maps sharpened into D. The guidance core revealed what must be done. Scattered across the colonies, arrays needed to be planted. Small devices built by the Watchers long ago. They were not weapons, they were harmonizers, broadcasting signals that spoke in the same rhythm as the countdown pulses echoing across space. They designed these arrays to answer the enemy, Hana said. Not to attack, not to surrender, but to show we understand their language. Kato leaned forward, studying the readouts. "So it's not about war, it's about proving we can listen." Professor Vale shook his head slowly. "This will never be celebrated. People expect heroes with bright victories. They will not understand patience. They will not honor silence." Still, the decision had already been made. The ship carried 7 arrays, each one tuned to create a network of calm across the solar system. One by one, the team delivered them. A relay was planted in Ceres' shadow. Another was fixed in the orbit of Mars. A third hummed quietly above Luna's far side. Each time, the arrays activated, their signals joining into a soft, steady rhythm. 3 pulses, a pause. 3 pulses, a pause. "We're not shouting into the dark," Sienna said. "We're breathing into it." The broadcast spread like ripples, quiet but deliberate. There were no explosions, no banners, no speeches. There was only a soft hum carried across the void, a rhythm meant to show that humanity had chosen patience over pride. Back inside the ship, the guidance core offered one final projection. The message was not from the present, but from the Watchers themselves, recorded almost a century earlier. It spoke in simple words. "We made a choice that could never be celebrated. If you are reading this, the time for applause has still not come. Remember, survival is not glory. Survival is continuation." The voice faded, leaving the cabin in silence. Kato looked at Sienna. "So that's it? No victory parade? No medals, Just this quiet, Sienna answered. But quiet is what keeps tomorrow alive. The ship returned to Europa, docking once again in the frozen hangar. The arrays pulsed steadily across the system, faint as a heartbeat, but strong enough to be heard by those who might be listening from beyond the stars. Humanity's answer was not a challenge. It was not surrender. It was a promise. We are here, and we are learning to endure. Professor Vale recorded nothing for the public. Dr. Hana Morimoto stored the scans in a secure archive, but never shared them outside the team. Kato logged the journey under a false cargo run, erasing the trail from official eyes. Sienna carried the memory quietly, knowing that her name would never be tied to the survival of her species. For the listener, the voiceover makes it clear. This was the last untouched path, the only one that held the future. It was not chosen with celebration. It was chosen with steady hands and calm voices. The Watchers had passed their burden forward, and Sienna accepted it. Outside, the stars burned without notice. No one cheered. No one marked the moment. Yet in the silence, humanity's chants endured, hidden like a flame sheltered from the wind. The story closed, not with triumph, but with quiet continuation, reminding us that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones no one will ever celebrate.